Hello and welcome to Tim Rodey Drive Stuff. I'm Tim Rodey, and the stuff this week, what I'm driving, is the BMW iX. This is BMW's flagship German electric SUV, and I actually drove this in Germany last year in its more expensive, bigger battery xDrive50 form. This is the cheaper xDrive40. It's some £20,000 cheaper than the car I drove last year because it's got a slightly smaller battery and some less stuff on it. So I want to find out today if this is the one you should actually buy with your own money, or if you should actually stump up for the slightly more powerful, longer range version. So I'm going to take you for a walk around, go for a drive and find out if you should keep 20 grand in your pocket. Let's go. Some bald witterings coming up. I'm going to share my biggest grievance about the iX xDrive40 up front, and it's not really to do with the size of its flap, although it does have massive flaps. But yeah, it's to do with the battery. The battery in this car is 71 kilowatt hour usable, and that is a lot smaller than the battery in the more expensive one, the xDrive50. That gets a 105 kilowatt hour battery, so the expensive version of this can do more than 300 miles on a charge, which is great. This can barely do 200, which for an £80,000 EV in 2022 is not really good enough. 200 miles on a charge? Obviously it depends on what kind of driving you do, whether you do long distances, that kind of stuff. But yeah, come on BMW, can you give us the less powerful version like this, and it has got the same motors as the xDrive50, just to be confusing, but they're less powerful in this. Can you give us the less powerful version with the bigger battery? Because that'd be able to go to the moon or something, which would be brilliant. But anyway, enough flap chat. Let's go and take a look at how this looks. Come on, internet people. Get ready with your "it's ugly" comments. The car, not me, hopefully. Yes, I can't put off showing you its face any longer. Look at it. It's certainly as divisive, I think, as it was when it first got unveiled last year. I don't mind it. I think this is its best angle. It looks a little bit dumpy from the rear three quarters. Massive grille, which is obviously just solid sheet of plastic, although it is plastic that if you scratch it will self-heal. But I think that's just the property of the plastic. As it gets hot, all the scratches fall out. But you can see it's cameras, it's got sensors, it's got more cameras and sensors and radars than any other BMW, because soon these will have level 3 autonomous driving. I should tell you about the price. 70 grand for one of these. I totally missed that, didn't I? £70,000. This one has 10 grand of options on it, including I think 2 grand of visibility pack, which is these laser headlights. It's got 1,200 quid of upgraded wheels. These are 22s, not 21s. It's got 3.5 grand of tintable glass sunroof. You press the button inside and it changes the opacity, which is quite cool. I'll show you that in action. From the side, the xDrive40 does not get air suspension. The xDrive50 gets lovely air suspension. That was one of the most refined cars I've ever driven. I sat at 130 miles an hour on the Autobahn in complete silence. So yeah, we'll find out what the ride is like on this. This also doesn't get four-wheel steering as standard, which has been noticeable, to be honest, because parallel parking this on the narrow streets near my house has actually been not fraught, just trickier than if I had four-wheel steer. And it's worth pointing out this is just under 5 meters long, so it's the same size as a BMW X5. Just, I know it's hard to tell on YouTube how big a car actually is. Weighs 2.4 tons, so it's about 100 kilos lighter than the faster one, the xDrive50. But yeah, I just think it looks a little bit dumpy from the rear three quarters. Before I show you the excitement that is the boot, I just want to show you this car is built around a carbon cage, BMW calls it. It's going to be too dark, isn't it? There you go, look at that. This is all kind of like carbon fiber reinforced stuff, a bit like on the i8 and the i3, and that's all to keep weight down. All the weight of this car is carried in the battery pack along the floor, so the centre of gravity, like all EVs, is super low, but you do still feel the weight when you're driving it. Anyway, this one's got £1,000 of optional retractable tow bar. It can actually tow 2.5 tons on a braked trailer, which I think is about 200 kilos more than a Tesla Model X and quite a bit more than a Mercedes EQC. So in terms of towability, this is really good, although you only do about 100 miles on a charge, obviously, when you're towing, because it knackers your range. The boot is, I'd actually say, a little bit underwhelming. It's 500 litres and it's just quite a narrow space. These bits jut in quite a lot. It's all a little bit weird. So you can still get a buggy in there, and this has been fine for carting the kids around with all their stuff. And you can flip the seat headrests and everything down using all these buttons and levers. But yeah, if I look under the boot floor, there's a big cavern under there, but it's kind of taken up with charge at home cables. So if you can kick them out, you'll free up some extra room. You've got a solid parcel shelf that lifts up, and you can just throw that in the garage or something if you want more permanent space. But yeah, the boot is not as big as you would think, and an X5, I can't remember off the top of my head, has a much bigger boot. Now, back seats I've cocked up because I've left my child seats in, but you do get a lot of rear seat space. I'll chuck one of these out and climb in, but you can see child seats fit quite easily, although like the boot floor, the floor inside is quite high, so you don't actually need to have your child seat legs out very high. Lovely cloth on the door. I'll talk about the materials in a bit. The default hi-fi is a Harman Kardon, hard-on. You can upgrade for about £5 to a Bowers & Wilkins as part of another pack. This sounds fine. You've got USB-Cs on the back of the seats, which is really, really clever for charging your iPads, your kids' iPads. I'm going to kick a child seat out and I'll jump in and show you what a tall adult looks like. Sorry, it's my face again, but this is what it looks like in the back of the BMW iX. I've got acres of headroom. Acres and acres of headroom. I've got loads of room for my feet, and they fit nicely under the seat. Some EVs, the floor comes up so high, you've got no room under there for your feet. I've got some controls here for climate stuff. Yeah, it's actually really nice and airy. If I shut the door, it's still nice and airy. You'll have to teach your kids though that this button is what you press to open the door. So you put your hand like this and go, and it's an electrical button to open the doors. Though by law, you have to have a physical door handle, and that is hidden down here. So yeah, BMW is just being a bit fancy, and you can pull that to open the door. You've got some door bins which aren't lined with felt, so stuff will rattle around in there. You've got an air vent there, you've got a suit hanger here, you've got another one up here which I'm struggling to get out. There we go. So there's loads of practical things in this which I quite like. It's been thought out as a family car. However, flip this little armrest down, and what do you have? No cup holders. At least not in the top of it. You do, if you press this, have little pop-out ones, so you can still rest your arms on that and be comfortable and have a cup holder there. So you don't have hard plastic cup holders here. Actually, that's quite clever. BMW, you get points for that. But anyway, enough about the back seats. Let's look up front, because there's loads of tech up there. And this one doesn't have some of the really fancy stuff that my German press car did. So we can see what a normal iX looks like inside, not one that's had £1 million worth of options added to it. Just £10,000. Chump change. Yeah, up front you get two big screens. You get a 12-inch one for the driver's display, and you get a 15-inch one here, which is a touchscreen, or you can use the iDrive controller down here. Now this is BMW's latest operating system 8 version of iDrive, and it is fantastic. It has so many features. Look, you can see a blue circle that shows how far I can drive on this charge, and it can find charges very easily. And it's got lots of voice prompts which do actually work. Surprise, surprise. And it's got wireless CarPlay and Android Auto, and it's just really a fantastic system. Now, I spoke about that £5 upgrade to improve the stereo. That also gives you, I think it's Parking Assistant Plus or Pro or something. This car can self-park like most cars, but the Parking Assistant Pro will let you do it from the outside of the car, and it also let you teach it 10 routes. So if you've got a really tricky parking garage, you can drive it and record the route yourself, and then the car will just repeat that, and it will know it's in place using GPS sensors and all this stuff. I've got to show you the sunroof. Hopefully you're going to be able to see this on camera. There's a button up here. This one here, it's not really a button. Look, sun goes away some more. And if I press it a third time, sun goes away even more. Sorry, I think there are 4 settings. Hi trees. Bye trees. Sorry, that doesn't really come across on camera, but it is quite cool. It is not like making it completely dark in here or anything like that, but it is a cool little change. There are loads of different interior packs that you can get on the iX. This one's called like Stone Design Loft or something like that. I quite like it. There's lots of vegan materials, and it's all very eco-friendly and touchy-feely, and it's such a light and airy space in here. Look, that goes all the way down there. There's a big wireless charging tray and cup holders and stuff under there, which I'll put a cutaway in. Yeah, you want to give some thought about how you spec this. One option this car doesn't have is called the Clear and Bold interior pack, and it is £1,000, but it makes this cut crystal. It makes the door mounted seat adjusters cut crystal with like a goldy tinge, and they look amazing, and they do actually make a big difference. And it also gives you an open pore wood fascia here, where all that shiny black plastic is, that becomes wood. And with the crystal knob on top of it, you put a crystal knob on top of my wood, oh, it just looks fantastic. So it's actually kind of worth having. I know it's being a bit of a tart, but yeah. Right. I forgot to talk about these strips of coloured light. You won't be able to see them, but they're behind the doors, and when you open it, it flashes green, it flashes red when you lock it. And you can actually set an iPhone up to act as a key for this car. So you just take your iPhone out with you, and then you can keep it charged using the wireless charger. I said I was going to do a cutaway of this space, but I'm just going to show you instead. If I move my GoPros, there's a wireless charger there. You've got a 12 volt and 2 USB-Cs and cup holders, and it's just quite fancy, and you can play footsie with your passenger through that gap. That's the best thing about EVs, isn't it? Right, that's enough waffle about the interior of this iX. Let's take it for a drive and find out how different it feels to the xDrive50 version, if it's really worth stumping up the extra money for it. Let's go. Right, let's go for a drive in the BMW iX. I'm going to put my foot on the brake, hit the start-stop button. Ooh, it whirs with a noise that Hans Zimmer probably made, and then back into D to go. Now, I didn't talk about the differences in charging speed between the xDrive50 and the xDrive40. The xDrive40 can charge at 150 kilowatts, the xDrive50 195 kilowatts, so the more expensive one can charge a bit faster. But in terms of the 10% to 80% charging times, they're similar, because the faster charging one's got a bigger battery to fill. But anyway, in terms of performance numbers, this has got 336 horsepower, 630 newton meters of torque, which is a lot, and it'll do 0 to 62 in 6.1 seconds. Bigger brother does it in 4.5, 4.8, something like that. So it is a lot quicker, the xDrive50. And the xDrive60, yeah, that's 3.8 to 60, and it's got a bit more range as well. Now, I haven't really noticed the lack of air suspension on this. This is a very well judged regular suspension setup. It is pretty cushy. You feel the weight occasionally, like over sharp edges. If I drive off the road slightly here, no, it's actually fine. But yeah, over sharp kind of horizontal lines, you know what I mean, lateral breaks in the road, it can get a bit crashy, and you feel the 2.4 tons struggling to be controlled by the suspension. But by and large, in everyday driving, this is very comfortable, and it doesn't have any of the wallowiness that you sometimes get with cars on air suspension. So it's not going to make your passengers feel sick. It's only when you start hammering around roundabouts faster than you should that you'll be like sliding sideways in these seats, because they're kind of like sofa seats. They're not massively supportive, but they're fine. Right, in terms of actual practical living with it things though, it is easy to drive. The mirrors are big, I can see out the back. It's just easy. It doesn't feel like you're driving an absolutely massive tank, although it is quite a large car. Yeah, perhaps the cleverest thing about this car is the way the sat-nav, the maps, and the way it always knows where it is from all those sensors. That all feeds into the regenerative braking. So when you lift off the accelerator, look, it knows I'm coming up to a junction, and it's slowing down quite a lot. I will have to brake before the junction, but it will change the level of regeneration that you get based on road conditions and traffic. Yeah, and especially if you've got route plumbed into the sat-nav as well. So if you're doing 70 on a dual carriageway with no roundabouts or anything, you lift off the accelerator, it will pretty much coast and keep doing 70. But if you're on a dual carriageway and there's a roundabout coming up, lift off, it will start braking. If it knows there's a speed limit change coming and you lift off, it will make sure when you lift off, it will coast down at the right rate to get to the speed limit, so you don't break the speed limit. It's very clever, and that's perhaps the most impressive thing about this car. That all sounds really nerdy, but it makes it really easy to drive. It makes it relaxing to drive, and you come to use the brakes and you think, I've not moved my right foot to the brake pedal in about half an hour. It's very clever. There's no paddles behind the wheel, so you're not adjusting levels of recuperation manually. I could wang on about how good the regeneration of this car is for hours. I probably have done. So I'm going to get some dual carriageway, stop talking about that, and tell you how quiet it is on a dual carriageway, because it's really quiet. See you in a minute. Right, I'm about to accelerate from a 50 limit up to 70 miles an hour, the UK motorway speed limit. Speed limit, not a target. But anyway, I'm going to turn my non-circular wheel around here, and there's a surprisingly little body roll for such a big heavy car, and that's 70 miles an hour. Yeah, I've got a bit of wind noise off this mirror, but this is pretty bloomin' quiet. Now, I think the xDrive50 I drove was even quieter, but obviously I was in Germany on buttery smooth nubile German tarmac, whereas I'm on slightly warty pockmarked British stuff, but certainly really impressively quiet, as I've said already, probably breaking the silence to say it. In terms of efficiency, I've been doing about 100 miles of mixed driving around town, quite a lot of dual carriageway stuff, and I've only been averaging 2.2 miles per kilowatt hour, giving me a theoretical range of not much over 150 miles. And when I got this car, a full charge was showing 210 miles. I know on paper this one should do 260 miles, but yeah, I would really want to go for the bigger battery one just for peace of mind, because as soon as you go onto a motorway, the range is going to drop slightly, and if it's cold, the range is going to drop slightly, and then you're staring down the barrel of only being able to go like 170, 180 miles on the charge, which isn't really good enough. Anyway, I've whinged about that already, so I'm going to get some twisty roads and put the car in sport mode, because 2.4 ton EV should definitely have a sport mode, and find out if this is still good to drive. I did have quite a lot of fun hooning these in Germany, but yeah, let's see what this one is like. Right, let's go down twisty road, 0 to 50, let's just boot it. Oh yeah, the acceleration is pretty vicious to start with, and it tails off. That's 50 miles an hour. So yeah, it does still have loads of mid-range poke when you put your foot down, despite not being the all-singing, all-dancing xDrive50 one. Now that car impressed me with how much grip it had and how much confidence it gave me to drive it, you know, at 50 or 60 miles an hour down a twisty road. Now, it's a heavy car. There's not loads of steering feel, but it grips really well and does somehow give you the confidence to drive it around corners quickly. And because it's dual motor, it can do all sorts of fancy torque vectoring stuff, and the motors can detect slip, and because there's no signal chain to an ECU and everything else, it can change the torque to the wheels really, really quickly. So BMW makes a big noise about this in the press release, and it all sounds really complicated, but basically the stability control and traction control can operate before you even realize it needs to. Let's go around this corner quicker than I should and see what happens. Yeah, it just grips and goes with no drama, no worries or anything. And it's quite a broken road, this, and the ride is still pretty good. So yeah, I think BMW has done enough to make this feel better to drive than a Hyundai Ioniq 5 or anything like that. Obviously that's a much cheaper car, but there is some BMW-ness about this in the way it drives. It's not laugh a minute, it's just a decent, well-sorted electric SUV. I've said sorted, that means it must be time to go and do a conclusion. Back to you, Tim, for an outro. Oh yeah, I need to talk about this. The turning circle. It isn't great. It really isn't great. I nearly ran out of road there, and that's a massive wide junction. I wish BMW had just given them all rear wheel steering. I know it probably put the price up, but this kind of feels like it needs it. The turning circle without it is a little bit crap feeling. I don't know if it actually is on paper, but it doesn't feel like it can turn very tight. Right, it's time for me to conclude and bring to an end this roller coaster whirlwind tour of the BMW iX. What do I think of it? Is it worth saving 23 grand to have less range, less power, and less air suspension? Oh, BMW, you are so cunning and wily, because I'd be so tempted to find, well, it's not really 23 grand, is it? On the monthly, it's about an extra 200 quid a month. I'd be tempted. Obviously, these are expensive, about 800-900 quid a month anyway, but if you're rich enough to have one of these, I would probably just get the xDrive50 for the extra range, for the extra comfort, for the extra four-wheel steering and some of the other standard stuff it comes with. Yeah, normally I say get the cheaper version, but the range on this is so much lower than its bigger brother. I would just have to go with the bigger brother. And there is an xDrive60 as well, but that's £110,000, which is ridiculous, and it's crazy fast. It's 0 to 60 in 3.8 seconds. I don't really know why they've done it, because it's not a sports car. But anyway, hopefully this was helpful. This is still a great car to drive. It is still comfortable. It's still very, very refined, and that interior is leagues beyond anything else you can buy at the moment. So yeah, despite the looks, this is still my favorite EV, kind of this high end in an SUV body shell. So yeah, thank you for watching. If it's been helpful, please hit like. If you've bought one of these, tell me in the comments and call me a sausage as is traditional. And I'll see you next time when it probably won't be this sunny. But yeah, ooh, look, beautiful scenery, BMW iX. I don't mind it, to be honest, I'm just being mean. Tell me what you think of this car in the comments and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.